Welcome to a USC Libraries tutorial. This video will cover how to find impact factors for a specific journal in a specific year, several reasons why you may not be able to find an impact factor for a journal, and how to communicate this information. Impact factor is a proprietary mathematical formula created by one company and published in Insights Journal Citation Reports. The company gathers data from journals on an annual basis and calculates an impact factor for a single journal for a single year. Most people are asked to find impact factor for a specific citation or for a specific journal. No matter how you're starting, make sure you have two pieces of information, the year and the full journal name. Impact factors are assigned to a journal in a specific year. It is not possible to provide the impact factor for a journal without being provided a year. Identify the year in the citation or clarify with the person who asked you for impact factor. You will also need to know the full title of the journal. If you do not know the full title, hovering your cursor over the citation in PubMed will show the full title of a journal, or use a web search to find the journal's homepage. Once you've identified a year and a journal title, enter USC's subscription to Insights Journal Citation Reports. Search the library's A through Z database list to find a link. Search the journal master list by journal title. When I search, I am taken to the Insights report for this journal in the most recent year available, which is 2019. This matches the year of interest that I have for my citation, so I can report that for 2019, the impact factor for academic emergency medicine was 3.06. If I had a different year in my citation, I could look at the All Years section and find the impact factor for that year. There are a few common difficulties with finding impact factors. What are these and how can you explain these problems to the group, person, or agency who's asking for the impact factor? Impact factors take some time to create. This video is being made in the spring of 2021, and the most recent year available for impact factor is 2019. Because impact factors require gathering data about a whole year of journal performance, they are calculated once per year and have traditionally been published in the early summer. You are not able to find an impact factor for a year and journal prior to these dates because the data required to calculate them has not yet been generated or is in the process of being analyzed. If asked to find impact factor for an article published in 2020, the impact factor for articles published in 2020 will likely be available in June 2021 is a complete answer. Another common difficulty is that not every journal has an impact factor calculated by Insights. Because calculating impact factors requires surveying lots of journals and their citation patterns, this tracking is only done for about 12,000 journals. Carefully search the Insights Journal Master List for the full journal title and separately for the International Standard Serial Number assigned to the journal before determining that the journal you seek is not included. However, if you cannot find it, this journal is not tracked by Insights, so does not have an impact factor, is a complete answer. Another common issue is that years are lacking. A private company makes impact factors and they have rules about when they decide to track journals. BMC Emergency Medicine began publishing in 2001, but was not tracked for impact factor until 2019. There was no impact factor calculated for this journal prior to 2019. If asked to identify the impact factor for this citation, the answer would be there is no impact factor available for this journal in this year. I understand that impact factor is very important, and it's difficult to tell someone that an impact factor doesn't exist. Many other companies or journals will offer impact factors for years missing in Insights or for journals not tracked by Insights. However, the only official, real, proprietary impact factors come from Insights Journal Citation Reports. Do not trust any other source of data for impact factors. If you cannot find an impact factor for a specific journal, there are other competing metrics you can use to assess the value and impact of scholarly work. If you need help finding an impact factor or have other questions about scholarly communications, contact the USC Libraries.